Hello world, this is Jeffrey, JGB146 Blake for Hoopa Hideout, coming to you with yet another deck profile. This one is all new, coming straight out of Paradox Rift, with the exception that obviously it makes use of some Pokemon and some cards that we had before. So some of you maybe have never heard of this Pokemon as far as the card game is concerned. Maybe you never thought you'd ever care about it, but this is a new, mostly single prize deck that is really quite powerful. And I'm of course talking about Klawf. So Klawf, unassuming little crab Pokemon. He's fighting type. I think he's actually a stone type in the game, but don't quote me on that. And he has, of course, a second attack. Boiled Press does 80 damage and burns himself. So a lot of people look at this card and go, oh, that's how you activate things so that the first attack can come off. Unhinged Scissors, which does 30 damage, but if Klawf is affected by any special conditions, does a whopping 160 more damage for a total of 190. That would be one way to run this, but it would be a slow way, and it's definitely not what we're going to do. Instead, we have the deck tailored around making use of special conditions to activate that first attack, and we're only playing double turbo energy to be able to use that first attack as soon as turn 1. And it is very consistently used by turn 1. So, comboing with Klawf, we have 3 copies of Brute Bonnet, another new Paradox Rift Pokemon. This is one of the ancient Pokemon, and we're playing him exclusively for his ability. Toxic Powder, when you've attached the ancient energy booster capsule to Brute Bonnet, it boosts his HP and we don't really care, but it gives him the ability, it activates the ability for him to poison both active Pokemon on any given turn, once per turn. So that means you can poison your own Klawf, just as an ability, on a single prizer that is not a rule box Pokemon, so then it can activate even under Path. You don't really care much about Path. You care a little, but only a very, very tiny little, and we'll get to why in just a moment. But so you can very easily, if you've got DTE, Brute Bonnet, and his tool, like that, you can start attacking for what ends up being 170. It jumps up to 180 once the poison ticks down. But we can do better than that, and we will. So, in addition to this combo, we also have Hisuian Electrode V. I have 2 copies that I'm playing in this current list. You could play 3. Actually, the list that I started from played 3, but due to my meta, I'm playing 2 so that we can play a Drapion to deal with Mew, because there's a lot of Mew in my local area. So 2 copies of Electrode V, Hisuian Electrode V, I should say. He has the 0 energy attack, which is great. You don't have to worry about attaching energy to him at all. And his attack just does 100 times however many special conditions he's affected by. Now, we could try to get fancy and throw in the tool, the wind-up arm that lets him attack even while he's asleep or paralyzed, but we're not. We're just using this as a base to get 200 damage going. 100 comes from the poison, which of course, like we said, is actually 110, and then another 100 comes because we can burn him, and I'll get to how in a little bit. So he can consistently attack for 210 damage, sometimes 230 damage, sometimes a little more than that even. So, in addition, we're playing a copy of Radiant Hisuian Sneasler. Now this is where the damage from the poison can tick up, and this is the only reason that we ever would care about Path, is that the difference sometimes between 210 and 230 from Hisuian Electrode is meaningful. 230 is a pretty important number. Additionally, with Klawf, instead of topping out at 180, we're now up to 200 damage, which is, of course, more meaningful. Then we're playing some support Pokemon to help make things work. We're playing a 2/2 line of Bidoof and Bibarel so that we can draw cards consistently throughout the game. And we're playing a 1-of copy of Squawkabilly EX to help us pop off on turn 1, and a 1-of copy of Drapion V to smooth out the Mew or the Mew VMAX matchup. If you don't have much Mew in your area, then replace the Drapion V with another Hisuian Electrode V or even something else. I'm sure you can find an extra tool to play that can help Klawf, maybe an extra choice belt. We'll get there. So moving on from the Pokemon, this is our full Pokemon lineup, and it's a fairly thick line. You don't end up mulliganing very often with this list. We are playing a 4 count of Iono, because with Bibarel, even late game, Iono is the perfect draw supporter for us. We are playing a 3 count of Arven. So Arven is great for letting us get an item that can help fill our bench and provide what we need. It can search out the item that we use to burn our Pokemon when necessary. It can search out the tool for either getting whatever card we need with Electrode V using 4 Sealstone, or for Brute Bonnet's ability to activate it, or just as an extra buff. With Klawf, you can get the choice belt that I talked about. You can get the original list. I don't actually own a copy of it, but the original list that I took this from played a tool jammer, That can be pretty powerful too in matchups where your opponent is using Bravery Charm or Luxurious Cape to add extra HP to their Pokemon. You can sometimes just attach a Tool Jammer, their Pokemon will just get KO'd instantly, and then you can take another attack for 200 plus damage, which, like I said, can be very effective. We're playing 2 copies of Boss's Orders so that we can target the Pokemon we want, helping you to target exactly where you need to go to get the maximum bang for your buck. You can really target Pokemon on your opponent's boards that have the HP you need to hit. We're playing a 2 count of Professor's Research, additional draw, obviously. We're playing a 1 of Grant. So Grant is in here for a few different reasons. One, he can add an extra 30 for Klawf's damage. Suddenly, we got up to the 200 number with the poison. Choice Belt against a V gets you to 230. Grant will bump that up to 260 even. So great use there. Additionally, Grant can be in your discard pile and lets you discard 2 cards to get him back into hand. So if you don't have a supporter for turn, you can just grab Grant out of your discard pile and use him. Or you can use him just to discard an extra card. You discard 2, but he comes back into your hand, so you netted a discard of 1 in order to draw an extra card with Bibarel. That can be pretty effective too. We're playing a 1 of Avery to clear out some of our opponent's board while drawing a few cards. That sums up our supporter count, and we'll get into our items. And of course, the first item is Spicy Seasoned Curry. So this is a card that a lot of people overlooked way back in the Astral Radiant format. What it does is it heals your Pokemon for 40 damage, but then burns them. So the effect there is, well, you heal off damage, and you get a special burn condition. A lot of times the healing is irrelevant, but sometimes it makes a big difference, and it can activate if you can't get the Brute Bonnet plays set up. Well, it works just as well to activate special conditions on Klawf. It gives you a second special condition for Electrode V so that you can hit his 200 number. And since we're playing 4 of them, along with 3 copies of Arven, it's pretty routine to be able to use Spicy Seasoned Curry on turn 1 if you can't pull off a Brute Bonnet play. Now we're playing 3 copies of Battle VIP Pass to get out Pokemon. I know, it's only 3, it's not 4. But in this list, since you're searching them out with Arven a lot of times when you need them, you get a lot of the Pokemon you need anyway. Really 3 works out pretty well in the experiences I've had. And then we're playing a 3 count of Ultra Ball. So the only thing that we really need Ultra Ball for is to search out Bibarel. Better cards exist for searching for everything else, such as Nest Ball, which we're playing 2 of. You could even swap these counts if you wanted, but we do want to get Bibarel set up as soon as we can to help keep moving through the game. There have been plenty of games where I've set up 2 Bibarels even. And we play some switching cards. We play a 1 of Switch Cart to heal things. Play a 1 of Switch, which is different than the list that I found on Limitless, but I want to include at least 1 Switch. I could even argue that we play 2. However, with all the damage you're doing from the special conditions, playing 1 Switch Cart is nice for that healing. The Switch lets you get Bibarel out of the active, which is very important because your opponents will sometimes target Bibarel since he can't attack. And we play a 1 of Escape Rope. So that's 3 ways out of the active. Usually you're hitting hard enough that if someone's trying to slow you down, that's going to be all you need to get out and to win the game through your attacks. Occasionally you might need something else, but that's pretty good. We play a 1 of Hisuian Heavy Ball, just in case we prized a Pokemon we really need, like the Radiant Sneasler to hit numbers, the Squawkabilly to get us going, or we're playing against Mew and we need Drapion. The rest of the Pokemon we're playing are usually not situations where you run into prizing issues just because you play thick enough lines. And then we play some tools. So we're playing 3 of the Ancient Booster Energy Capsule for Brute Bonnet to activate that special condition. It's an important thing to have access to, so we are playing 3, even though there are plenty of games where you only ever use 1. You could go down to 2 here if you want to fit in some other tools, if there's something else that you really think you need, but I wouldn't go lower than 2 ever, and I think 3 is really pretty good. We play a 2 count of Forest Sealstone. This helps you to get whatever you want when you need it. So the Forest Sealstone is pretty important. You end up using it pretty much every game, because there's plenty of ways we can get to the tools to then get us the piece that we need exactly when we need it. Playing a 1 of Bravery Charm just to boost the HP on Klawf or Electrode V. A 1 of Choice Belt to buff the damage from either of those 2. And a 3, and then we move to stadiums. So we have a 3 count of Town Store to help find the tools when we want them. Play a 1 of Collapsed Stadium, which is usually how we get rid of Squawkabilly, or if we happen to start Drapion in a match where we don't need him, we get rid of him that way. And then we play 4 more cards. Any guesses as to what they are? Of course, Double Turbo Energy. That's the list. It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty streamlined. It flows pretty well in my experience. I have actually had a very strong record with this deck. Better than almost any other Paradox Rift format deck. Now, there are certain matchups that are really bad for you. If you get against Pokemon that you just can't quite hit the numbers and they're able to cycle out. So Golden Go EX is pretty tough because the numbers there are just out of your reach. But that's the only one that comes to mind as being significantly problematic. And even then, when you're trading one prize for two, it works. It's pretty strong. Now, there are a few considerations that you can take advantage of. Like I say, the original list that I started from did not play Drapion V. Instead, it played an additional Electrode V. And I've seen lists, and I think it's a fine idea to play a one-of counter catcher, so that if and when you fall behind on prizes, you can have that extra gusting effect that doesn't take up a supportive return. However, you're usually going to be ahead on prizes because you hit so hard so fast. You can hit 230 on turn 1 going second, and it's not even that hard. I'd say it's probably easier in this deck than it is to hit 220 with Roaring Moon. So that's kind of really cool. An additional card that I've played around with, I haven't settled on whether or not to include it, but it's really nice when you can, is Roseanne's Backup, because Roseanne's Backup gets you a Pokemon recovered back into your deck, a tool recovered back into your deck, a stadium recovered back into your deck, and an energy recovered back into your deck. We play all 4 of those things. Obviously, there's no other way to get back double turbo energy, so we can recover a Klawf and the energy it needs to attack with, as well as one of the tools that's going to help out. Now, you could argue that if you're playing Roseanne's Backup, then you don't need a 3 count of the Ancient Boosters. You can play that Tool Jammer that was in the original list, which I don't have to show you, but that's another consideration, is including a Tool Jammer. And just look at the list of tools that are out there. There's a number of things that you could consider that might be a good substitution for one of these tools here. Now, if you are anything like me, or basically every player in my area, you don't have any copies of Electrode V. That's going to make you have to change up the deck some, but not as much as you might think. That's where you can add some alternate tools, throw in these 2 cards instead of the Electrode V, and end up with a very heavy Klawf focus. If you're going down that route, then you definitely want to include a Pal Pad, because you want to be able to attack 6 times, obviously, so you want to be able to reuse Roseanne's Backup, as well as reusing some of the other supporters when they're useful, when they're needed. That's about it. I think this is a very strong deck as it gets streamlined and really rough edges get ironed out. I think it's actually a contender for one of the strongest single prize decks that we have. And with that, I'm just going to sign off and say thank you for watching.